All right, so Pennsylvania politics, just weeks out from the election. Things are getting kind of wild, right?
Yeah, definitely heating up.
You sent over some fascinating stuff from the campaign trail, clips from that recent Trump rally, some speeches from the Harris Walz thing in Pittsburgh, and your notes just say, vibe check needed.
Yeah,
So let's dive in.
absolutely.
What are you picking up on?
It sounds like you're feeling a different kind of energy this time, and
Yeah.
you're right. The stakes just seem so much higher than usual, you know?
Wait,
Whereas this isn't just like disagreeing on policy. It's like the soul of America is on the line, or at least that's how it's being presented.
And that makes me think about the strategies we're seeing. Like that Trump rally clip,
Mm-hmm.
he goes off on this whole tangent about groceries.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the metaphors themselves are a campaign tactic now. What's the deal with that?
You've hit on something really interesting there. Because, in a campaign, every single word, every phrase, it's all carefully chosen for how it might hit voters, right? So when you use these relatable everyday images, even if they seem kind of out of place, it's a way to connect on a gut level, like bypass the policy stuff and go for shared experience, which is kind of Trump's whole thing.
So it's less about what he's actually saying and more about how it makes you feel.
Exactly, yeah. It's all about that emotional connection. Now, compare that with the Harris Walz rally over in Pittsburgh. You pointed out all those different speakers they had, local politicians. We had a former Steeler.
Right.
Even some college Democrats got up there. That's not by chance.
It felt very intentional, yeah.
Yeah.
Like they were showcasing a united front, which makes sense. I mean, Pennsylvania's going to be close, right?
Absolutely. It's crucial this year, real swing state. Both parties know it, so they're pulling out all the stops. This rally, it wasn't just about Harris and Walz. It was about boosting those local voices, getting the energy up,
Yeah.
really energizing the base.
And you could feel it, that energy. Even in those opening speeches, Mary Gibson, she's the one heading up voter protection efforts there.
Right.
She really hammered home how much every vote matters. Like, she reminded everyone, 2020 came down to 5 votes per precinct in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
5.
Wild.
It's insane. It felt like she was laying the groundwork for just how important this all is right now.
For sure. By bringing up how close it was in 2020, she's highlighting just how important turnout is going to be this time, right? It's like she's creating this urgency, reminding voters that whether they participate or not, it really can change the outcome. And that's huge, especially now when voting rights, election integrity, all that's so debated.
Totally, because even if people want to vote, they got to be able to and got to believe that their vote matters. But then you had Sam Podnar from the college Democrats. His message felt aimed at a different crowd entirely. He kept going on about how Trump hasn't gotten 1 ounce less extreme.
Right.
Was that about getting younger voters fired up, the ones who might be kind of over the whole thing?
You're catching on to the subtleties here. Because appealing to different groups of voters, that's campaigning 101. What Podnar said, that's designed to hit home with younger voters, the ones more concerned with social justice, political extremism, all that.
So it's like tailor the message to who you're talking to, their worries, what they care about.
Exactly. You got to understand what motivates each group and play to that.
Okay, so we've got those relatable metaphors from Trump. We've got Gibson with the voter turnout, Podnar's message for the younger generation. Seems like they're trying to hit every angle here.
And that's exactly what we should expect in such a close election. Every single voter could make the difference.
And speaking of hitting every angle, we've got to talk about Will Allen coming out on that stage.
Oh, yeah.
Former Steelers Super Bowl champ.
Talk about an attention grabber.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's how you get people to listen, right?
Absolutely. Celebrity endorsements, those can be huge in a campaign.
Definitely.
But with him, it wasn't just showing up. It was what he actually said.
Right.
He drew such a stark contrast, between the candidates. Harris and Walz, they care about people, he said. But Trump and Vance, they want to drag us backwards. That's heavy.
Which, again, feels like that emotional appeal we talked about, but like aimed at a whole different group.
For sure.
If you're a Steelers fan, you probably trust Will Allen's take on things, right?
Absolutely. It's about using that trust, that goodwill, to sway voters. He's basically vouching for them, using his platform to get that message to a much wider audience.
Right.
Especially people who might not be following politics super closely.
It felt like he was really setting the stage for Walz,
Oh, yeah.
building up to that speech.
Yeah.
And when Walz finally came out, the crowd went nuts.
Oh, I bet.
The energy at these things, it's contagious.
Totally. And Walz, he used that energy, for sure. But he also had a plan. for the speech itself, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's a common tactic, but it works. You start by finding common ground. He talked about the whole shared industrial history
Right.
between Pennsylvania, his home state of Minnesota.
He even made that joke about the Steelers and Vikings rivalry.
Yeah.
Got a good laugh out of everybody.
It's smart, though, right? Like, connect with them on something relatable, then you can get into the heavier topics.
Exactly. That shared experience, it builds up a rapport. They're more likely to hear what you're saying. And then he contrasted his background, Harris's too, with Trump's wealth.
Yeah, he brought up that Wall Street Journal thing,
Right.
calling him maybe the poorest person to ever run for VP.
Which is a very deliberate strategy. He's highlighting his own, not coming from privilege to kind of implicitly critique the whole wealth gap thing.
It's true.
Positioning himself as the champion of the working class, tapping into those economic anxieties, turning them into votes.
And it wasn't just talk. Like, he had those policy ideas, the whole we all do better when we all do better.
Exactly.
Which felt like the opposite of what we've been hearing from, the other side. Absolutely. He's framing this as a choice between two completely different visions for America, working together or every man for himself. And by using that phrase, it's catchy, it sticks with you, but it's a whole economic philosophy boiled down.
Because who wants to hear a lecture about economics?
Right. And that's where his next point lands. He got into the actual struggles people are facing, especially in places like Pennsylvania, hit hard by job losses.
Yeah.
He specifically mentioned those 275,000 jobs gone under Trump,
Oh.
directly tying it back to those policies.
He did not hold back. But then he switches gears to something that affects literally everybody.
Right.
Cost of living,
Yeah.
childcare, housing,
Yeah.
even just buying, like groceries, formula, all of that.
It's about taking these big abstract problems and making them feel real.
Exactly.
By talking about those everyday struggles, he's creating that shared experience, saying, I get it, I'm with you, positioning himself as someone who understands those problems.
And I think that's where those stories came in. Like that mother who fought to get insulin prices capped after his son died because he couldn't afford it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Powerful story, right? It takes a complex issue, healthcare costs, and just distills it into this human experience. You feel that. It hits you harder than just numbers and figures.
That's not theoretical anymore.
Exactly.
These are real people, real families. And then Medicare, which, let's be honest, can be kind of a boring topic.
Yeah, for sure.
But then he throws out Medicare covering glasses and hearing aids.
Oh, I like that.
Suddenly everyone's listening again.
Right. It's brilliant. You take something that seems abstract, you make it concrete, you give people a tangible benefit. Seniors, that's a huge voting bloc, and now he's speaking directly to them.
It felt like he was talking to, like, that Fox News Republican uncle we all have.
Right, right.
The one who votes Republican but also really wants those affordable hearing aids.
Exactly.
You think he might actually win some people over with that?
It's possible. By framing things like healthcare, cost of living, as just common sense, not Democrat or Republican, he's trying to build a bigger tent, It's a risk, might turn some people off, but in a race this close, it could be what he needs.
It's interesting you say that about turning some people off, because the whole tone really shifted after that.
Yeah.
He goes from those like common sense solutions to reproductive rights, gun violence, heavy stuff.
Right. And that shift, it's very intentional. It's a different kind of appeal, He's not trying to win over undecided voters anymore or reach across the aisle.
It felt different.
He's going for his base now, those hot button issues, those topics that get people fired up, angry, scared even.
Right.
And those emotions, those are powerful, especially when you want people to actually go vote.
Yeah. And he really went there, talking about his own experience with fertility treatments, trying to start a family, all the emotions that come with that.
Right. It gets personal.
It did. It put such a personal spin on something that can feel, I don't know, kind of distant.
It's about making that connection, humanizing yourself to voters, especially on an issue as sensitive as reproductive rights.
Exactly.
He's not just a politician anymore. He's someone who understands.
And then telling Hadley DeVal's story, that 12-year-old from Kentucky, remember, the one who was raped and had to carry the pregnancy.
That's a tough one.
It was quiet in that room. You could feel it land.
Stories like that, as hard as they are to hear, they're reminders of what's at stake, the real consequences of these policies. It's not theoretical anymore.
Not at all. And then gun violence, obviously huge, especially after what happened in Philly last year.
Right.
But he came at it from an interesting place, talking about how he and Harris They're gun owners, too.
Interesting tactic,
I mean,
because he's heading off that criticism right away, that they're coming for your guns argument.
right, right.
Like, he's making space for a more nuanced conversation about responsible ownership, common sense, all that.
Because he wasn't saying get rid of all guns, he even said that it was about background checks, things like that, which he reminded everyone, even Trump couldn't get done.
Which is smart. He's highlighting the hypocrisy there, appealing to the more moderate voices on that side, the ones who might be open to some change.
It tied together a lot of those threads, personal freedom, safety, the role of government, and it all came back to that question, what future are we choosing?
Exactly. Two different paths for America, two different sets of values. It's a classic campaign tactic, appeal to their hearts and their heads. And it works, especially with these emotionally charged topics.
And he ended on that call to action. Hope isn't enough, he said. You got to vote.
Right.
Vote early, volunteer, donate, whatever you can do.
Got to get people involved because enthusiasm only gets you so far. This is it. This is where it matters. And he knows that.
So we covered a lot, huh? From grocery metaphors to, like, deeply personal stuff, economic fears, social justice.
It's a lot to unpack, but that's kind of the point of these deep dives, right? To make sense of it all, understand those strategies.
Exactly, because it's not about who's got the best slogans, who sounds good on a stage. It's about the issues, having these conversations, and then actually making your voice heard. So as we go through the rest of this election season, remember what stood out to you today, what felt important. Was it those personal stories, the policies, that energy in the room? Hold on to that. Let it guide you as you listen to these candidates, as you see those ads, as you have those conversations around the dinner table. That's how you cut through the noise and figure out what really matters to you. And that's what this whole thing is really about.